bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor.
My name is Gavin Michael Booth. I'm the writer, director, producer of The Scarehouse. The Scarehouse is best summarized as sort of Mean Girls meets Saw. Some people would say Jawbreaker meets Saw. It's about two young ladies that have opened a Halloween fun house. They've just gotten out of jail. We don't really know what their purpose is at the beginning, but quickly as the movie unfolds, they start inviting their former sorority sisters who believe they're coming to their annual Halloween party and don't realize that they're in for a treat because they may or may not be the reason that these two girls went to jail, and this is their sort of unfolding venomous plan of revenge. So it's a question of who's going to make it out alive, who can survive the Scarehouse. This is my first horror movie, so being invited and welcomed into the horror community. I've always been a horror movie fan my whole life, grew up reading Fangoria just like everybody else, but this community has such love, and the fans and the people who love horror films, they really are the true supporters. I've worked in other genres, and you don't get that with a dramatic film. Sometimes with sci-fi would be relatable, but all these fan conventions and the festivals where everybody wants to meet the filmmakers and help use social media to spread the films that they like, it's really inviting. It makes us want to do another horror movie right away. I grew up in a town called Amherstburg, Ontario, which is next to Windsor, Ontario, where I spent the majority of my youth, and except for the last 2 years, I've been in Toronto. Windsor's the town I grew up in. I've shot most of my productions there. Even when I've been working with much larger sort of music acts, we always bring them to Windsor to shoot their music videos because it's a very inviting community. There's not a lot of filmmaking that happens there. And particularly with the Scarehouse, the idea, the whole birth of the story, I have a really good friend there named Sean Lippert who runs Windsor Scarehouse. Sean Lippert runs this haunted attraction. It's what all the kids go through. And I was in there one day when he was setting up. I got asked to help move some things in and help him. And I'd never seen a haunted house from the other side with the lights on. And I was like, so you have like 60 people that are in here? You got the guy that grabs the ankles and this and that and that. He says, dude, there's like 5 people in here. Well, how does that work? He says, well, there's a trap door here. So the guy who's dressed up like Leatherface with a chainsaw, he sneaks through a door, he puts his tools down, he changes his mask into a Grim Reaper cloak, and then he's over here, and they just sort of leapfrog, and it feels like you're being attacked and approached by all of these people, but really there's only a few people in here. It's all bells and whistles and pulleys and trap doors. And I'm always trying to think, as a filmmaker, I don't have giant budgets, so it's well, what's the next cheap movie we could do? I said, well, what if we did something, we just call it the Scarehouse, and what if we do something where people are trapped inside of a haunted house, or the people running the haunted house have this sort of malicious intent for their customers. I had previously been working on a film that we didn't get to shoot called 4 Shots, which is about a shooting in a high school, like a Columbine style story. And every time we got close to production on that, there was a real life incident. There was Virginia Tech, there was Sandy Hook, there was the Batman theater shooting. And that film kept losing its funding. And so I put that on the shelf, and I said, well, what if I just took the revenge thing? I like this idea of people that are very misguided, that need a revenge plot. What if I move it inside the Scarehouse? And it just made sense because I can call Sean up as one of my best friends and say, hey, we're going to shoot it off season. He's only open October 1st, so October 31st. We'll come in August. Most of our sets are built. The most we need to do is rearrange a few things. And it was shot inside of an old warehouse in Windsor that used to be what's known as the Knights of Columbus Hall, which would be like a YMCA in the US. So there's an old swimming pool room, old bowling alley, old dining room and banquet hall, and we just built all the sets in the entire production base inside of there. I pitched it to D Films in Canada and Universal Studios here in the US, and everybody said, that's great. And I said, well, because we're shooting it in Windsor, we can do this whole movie for $200,000. This is going to be really cheap. And we pitched it, Mean Girls meets Saw. They approved the concept. Everybody was on board. So my wife, who actually plays the lead in the film, Corey Peters, so we sat down, wrote the script from May till August, went to camera in August. My crew is sort of like a ragtag bunch of people from Windsor that aren't necessarily from a filmmaking background. But as I grew up there, again, not having a film scene, I'm pulling people from, well, you're an electrician, so that means you technically are a gaffer. Let me just show you a couple tricks of the trade. We have this sort of like underdog team. We're like the Bad News Bears of filmmaking. We brought a few people in from Toronto that needed to fill the gaps, but my crew is the greatest crew because that's how I feel. I'm sure everybody feels that about their crew, but really everybody wants to be there. They're not all doing it just for a paycheck. It's not a union gig where like, I'm on whatever movie. Everybody's very passionately about what they're doing. And I try to always bring that to the project because I feel it shows in the end product when you have people that actually care about what they're making. And same with casting. We wanted to make sure we had talented actresses. I keep reading reviews now of the film, now that it's coming out, that the acting is phenomenal. I didn't know that generally in horror films, it seems to people believe that acting is a little subpar to story and effects. So I feel that we did an amazing job casting the film. We tried to pick bright and upcoming Canadian actresses. So in getting the film put together, it's always the how do you get an indie film financed? How do you make it work? We had a little bit of private money in the budget. That sort of triggered it. Canada, we have a great film system with sort of grants and government subsidies and tax credits. You get 40% back on the labor, much like you hear about in New York or Cleveland or LA or wherever. Atlanta's big for that now. All these communities are trying to bring new industry there. So we have a 40% tax credit, which meant every dollar spent on crew or cast, we were able to claim 40% back. So you use that to finance the movie. You sort of take a loan out in advance. And the Canadian government kicked in half our budget through Telefilm Canada. Now they become a partner. They become a creative partner. They typically don't do genre films. I was just actually talking to a few of the other Canadian filmmakers here, and I always get this question like, how did you get Telefilm to give you money? I said, well, we went in with a script. They had previously been involved in my school shooting movie, and even though that film didn't happen, we built up a relationship where they trust me as a filmmaker, and we had distribution set in Canada and the United States before we film. So there's less of a risk when they know that a film is going to be seen, and part of their mandate is to create Canadian film that can reach the world and reach an audience. Because there's a sad thing in Canadian film where a lot of films, it's sort of like if a tree falls in the forest, if a film is made in Canada and nobody sees it, did it ever exist? You know, it's really sad. It's very hard to get Canadians to come out because there's a mindset sometimes of like, oh, it's from Canada. There's even a joke in the South Park movie where the Terrence and Phillip movie starts at the beginning and people are leaving because they're offended. And somebody says, oh my God, this movie's terrible. And her husband goes, well, what did you expect? They're Canadian, you know? So that's sort of the culture. It's hard to get our own to come out. But how it worked with Universal is we didn't ask Universal for any money. Our Canadian distributor brokered the deal with Universal and just said, look, we're making this for so little money. We don't need your money. We're not asking you to fund it. Just release it. Be our American distributor. We'll bring the finished product, which helped free me up to make the movie that I wanted. You know, some people said the movie goes a little darker than they would have expected, and I think that's because I had the creative freedom. And our Canadian distributor was very freeing to say, Gavin, you know how to make movies. We don't. We know how to market movies. Go do your creative thing. And when the script was finished, they gave notes, but it was always with a, here's some notes. There was never any hard, finite, you must change this, or it's got to have more of this. And Telefilm was the same way. Even when we delivered the finished movie, I sent it to them to review, and they just said, no, we saw the rough cut. We know how everything's going. I'd rather watch it in the theater with audiences than give you any last minute changes. So it was very freeing to do what we wanted. It's funny, I felt like we didn't push it far enough. But apparently I'm just twisted enough that also the mentality of this watching humans torment other humans willingly and almost enjoying it kind of really, really disturbed people. So I think we've hit the markers of a great horror movie in that sense. But it was great. They didn't censor us and say, you got to take that out. Canada works each province as its own. So some provinces we got R, some we got the sort of adult accompaniment. But yeah, they were pretty hands-off in that and letting us make the movie that we wanted to make. Making a horror movie, I don't think people realize that there's just as many horror stories on set. You know, every independent movies, you never have enough money, you never have enough time, and you're often dealing with actors, crew that aren't seasoned. They don't really get the game or kind of know their place, so there's flaring egos everywhere. And I've experienced all of this in like single doses of this issue or that issue on multiple music videos, film sets. Scarehouse had every problem. It was every day was just almost like, am I on candidate? When is Ashton Kutcher coming out to tell me that we're being punked? You know, we had some people in tears every day. We had one actor that was incredibly difficult to deal with every day. Made set a living hell for many of us. Everybody had to walk on eggshells just to make sure they weren't upset. That's putting it politely. And you know, a couple crew people, and you have those bad apples, and it can quickly become as much like summer camp, where you get there or going to high school and you quickly identify and everybody moves into cliques. I like this person, I don't like this person, fuck them, da-da-da-da-da. It can become this catty sort of thing. So it takes you need a few real cheerleaders for the team and almost guardians and eyes and ears to make sure, you have to be aware when that kind of happens, you know. So you're not only just trying to make the movie as good as you can. You don't realize being an independent producer, you get in the movie like, okay, I technically know how to work a camera and tell a story, but you also have to be the boss and the human resources and everything else that goes along with dealing with that many personalities. And it is like summer camp, because then at the end of it, everybody goes, okay, promise you'll write, okay, bye. And so this film had everything. Actually, I think people will be just as horrified watching the making of the film as they will the film itself. And the fact that we have a film that people like out of the chaos that happened, even the building we moved into, the landlord promises all the plumbing works, everything's great. There weren't even pipes connected to the toilets. Mike Carrier, my producing partner, and his brother Brad, who happens to be a home builder, re-plumbed the building so that we had hot water in the kitchen we were planning on cooking our meals in. Like things you should not have to deal with in the middle of a production. A roof that was promised that they would fix the leak, so one of our sets got flooded twice. And oh, you made sure that all the construction in the city, because I see jackhammers next door, they're done by the time we start filming the movie, right? Yeah, we talked about that. So day 2 had to switch to midnights, which makes everybody really happy when you suddenly switch them to midnights. And everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, you know. So the fact that we have this movie that people enjoy, I'm especially proud of that, because this was like the trial by fire. If there was ever a time in my life where I thought maybe I'm not meant to be a filmmaker, I might have come the closest to questioning that on this film. Once you get over that hurdle and you defeat it, then you're just ready to be like, bring it on. What comes next, you know? This career is hard enough in every other aspect. That's my advice to any filmmaker. Get the crew that really believes in you. Be careful of bad apples, and like go with your gut. If you need to fire somebody, don't worry about friendships and everything else. You've got to make the movie, and especially when you're spending someone else's money. You have a responsibility, and it is a business as much as a creative venture. So it's you hear these horror stories, and mostly it's from people not bucking up and just doing what they had to do. I haven't done the horror film festival circuit, but it's so important. People follow these festivals. We had a festival in Montreal where everybody there, the social media the day after, I've never seen that at any other screening other than like our own hometown premiere where everybody's there to see, they personally know you. They don't know me from anybody. They don't know the cast. They might not even meet them that night, but if they like a film, the horror community gets behind it. And these festivals are so instrumental. And sometimes smaller festivals kind of go, oh, well, it's not, it's not Sundance, it's not whatever. And you're like, it doesn't matter. You have no idea what it's like, the energy when you go into these screenings. There's 3 films from Toronto here, so some of my friends are here with films, and we're all talking about it. It's just the idea that everything's so welcoming. You come in, and this festival in particular, everybody's just immediately, hi, who are you? Oh, come meet everybody from our staff. Come mingle. You should talk to this person. They saw your film and really liked it. And there's a good community here. I mean, I've only been here since last night, and already we're loving it. And that's why I said, well, we're going to come right as soon as it opens today. Let's get there and go mingle. I got into this business because I love doing it. So I love the fact that most of my friends I have around the globe now are directly related to filmmaking. So coming here and being able to network, it's people that want to work and collaborate and really get the idea of collaboration. So you meet the next writer that might write the script you're going to direct, or I might find somebody who says, I've got this great idea, would you help out? This festival, from what I've seen so far, does that incredibly well. And then the fact that you have the honoree program where you're honoring these legends. So again, like I came here and I got to meet the tall man. That's amazing. That's the things I never thought would happen in my lifetime. There's a bit of a thrill to that. I met the editor of Fangoria. That was my Bible growing up pre-internet. So there's a big thrill in coming to these events. This is the first movie I've ever had released in America or premiered here. That's a big deal to us. We need to support each other. So these kind of festivals, you can meet the other filmmakers. Everybody has the same woes and struggles, and you realize, okay, I have friends. I can do this. There's a whole team of us trying to break out and be the next generation of horror filmmakers. Being here at the New York City Horror Film Festival, this is an outstanding opportunity. I mean, this is the Tribeca cinemas. Like, we sit in Toronto, we hear about this theater all the time, and we hear about all these great festivals. And I've known of the New York City Horror Film Festival for years. I've had friends that have come here. So to actually be part of it, I'm having all these like first surreal moments with this film where it's like, oh, we're in that festival now that my other friends have gone to and won and come back and talk so much about. So it's a real honor to be here.
Let the body